Hi guys. So today I want to share a little insight, some tips if you like, because for about the last couple of weeks or so, as I've been setting up guitars and basically just trying to improve myself when I work on guitars, because as some of you may know, I really like to work on guitars, and it's so rewarding to actually take a guitar and make it play the best that it possibly can. And I've been working on a couple of different guitars lately, and no guitar is the same. So that also means that when you're setting up guitars, you have to take a couple of things into consideration. You have to think about the player itself, who's actually going to play the guitar. You have to take account of his preferences or specs, anything that he likes, and generally just try to match that while you're basically altering his guitar, because I've often found that when a customer brings in a guitar for me to improve or repair, work on, whatever, they've been playing a guitar for very long often, and they have adapted playing that guitar because right off the bat they did not know that the guitar they were playing was actually either set up wrong or in need of an upgrade or improvement. They just went ahead and played the guitar and basically just adapted to playing it. So they didn't know anything about string height, fret bossing, neck relief, pickup height, electronics, anything like that. And that's just how everyone starts out. I did that too, and I played on a guitar for quite some years before getting into all this guitar setup and fret leveling, refret, and I still have that guitar today. And when I got the knowledge to set up that guitar, it just made a world of difference. And it became a whole nother guitar for me. And it's strange thinking about when you think back and just go, how could I play that guitar? But as I said, you've just adapted to that guitar, and by playing it, you've just adapted to those settings or preferences, and yeah. But in this video, I would like to share with you a couple of things that I have experienced over the last couple of weeks, and it's a couple of things that I've been thinking quite a lot about, and I just want to improve myself while I continue working on guitars, and it's nice always to improve yourself and be able to, as I said, no guitar is the same, so it's nice to improve myself in that way, knowing that perhaps for the next guitar that I'm going to work on, I have to do a whole nother evaluation of that instrument, because it might need something completely different, and yeah, so this is what I've been experiencing over the past couple of weeks, and what it's all about. It's about the action of a guitar, or the string height, as also referred to, and basically when I go to set up a guitar, I I use the factory specs as a starting point, and basically those specs will be fine for a lot of players, and if not, then those factory specs are always tweakable, so you can adjust it from there. And the factory specs should always be seen as guidelines to getting your guitar set up somewhere in the ballpark of where you like it, or would like it to be at least. And when I work on Telecasters or Stratocasters, I always check up on the Fender specs, and they have a couple of setup guides actually for both a Stratocaster and a Telecaster. I can put a link to both of those in the description if you like that. And I go by those because they have everything from neck relief measurements, pickup height, action height, and anything in between that. So those measurements or numbers or specs, whatever you like to call them, are my basic starting guidelines when I go to set up a guitar, when it's ready to be strung up and set up. And sometimes you find yourself in a position where you're working on a guitar, whether it's a Fender or it's a Gibson or it's something completely different. You find yourself getting to that part of the setup where you actually need to take a look at the string height itself. And when you go to do the string height or action here, there are a couple of different ways that you can measure this. Some people like to measure at the 12th fret here, on the 12th fret wire, and some people like to do it at the 17th fret on Fender guitars, where the neck actually joins or meets the body. And this guitar I'm having in front of me here is a chord guitar. It's an M520, so M520, which is actually a quite nice guitar. It comes stock with a Tone Pros bridge, 2-pneumatic bridge here, and matching tailpiece too. And the Tone Pros bridges aren't actually cheap bridges, so basically just from stock this guitar has a quite good bridge and tailpiece. But what I experienced on this guitar was that I was basically just going over the guitar because it has been sitting for a while, and I just wanted to oil the fretboard and just make sure that everything was as good as it could be on this guitar. And I just thought that I would check the action again here to see where I was at, because lately I've started playing another guitar than my main gigging guitar. I used to play a Stratocaster guitar, and I basically played that guitar for almost 10 years. Rehearsals, at gigs, anything like that. And then a couple of years ago I bought a Squier Telecaster, which was a signature Telecaster. It was the Avril Lavigne Skull signature Telecaster, the one with the the where the scratch plate was kind of a chessboard or a chess box, and it was a guitar that I bought, and then it basically just stood in my guitar stand, and I didn't play it that much. But last Christmas I decided to take it home on the holidays and basically just give it a fret level and a complete setup. And since I did that, that guitar has basically become my main gigging guitar now. And it's strange because I still play the Stratocaster, and it's a great guitar, but the Telecaster actually, it only has one humbucker in the bridge position, and a 3-way switch. So the middle position is the full humbucker, and the two other positions are the north or south coil. So that's basically just the way I like it now, and I basically just use that humbucker in full humbucker mode, and it sounds really good. But the main thing in this here, with that Telecaster, I used the Fender specs, and for a guitar equipped with a humbucker, they recommended 1.6 millimeters for the pickup. So I did that, and they recommended 1.6 millimeters for the string height, and that was on the low E and the high E. So no slant or declined angle as you see on Gibson guitars. Then I had an understring radius gauge, this one that you see right here. This is a 12-inch, which matches this fretboard right here, but the Telecaster had a 9.5 radius. So I basically went in and adjusted the low E to 1.6, and basically when I do that, I use feeler gauges, automotive feeler gauges, which you can buy at almost any hardware store. And I stacked a couple of feeler gauges together, and basically just made it add up to 1.6 millimeters. And I slide that under, measuring from the top of the fret to bottom of the string, and adjusted it down to 1.6 millimeters on low and high E string. And then from there I took the understring radius gauge and put it onto the strings here, basically just sliding it back so that I could check down here to see if the string was actually following the radius. And it wasn't, because that guitar hasn't been set up before. So I made the remaining 4 strings, the B, G, D and A string, match the curve, because once you've set the 2 outer E strings, you just have to match the remaining 4 strings to the radius. And the guitar was nice, it was playing very well, and I liked it. At that time I wasn't completely clear about playing it all the time, but as the time went on, I played it a lot more often, and it felt good. Then a couple of weeks ago I went back and played the Stratocaster again, and I noticed that when playing those 2 guitars in comparison to each other, I found that the Stratocaster guitar was actually a lot easier and smoother to bend on, especially on the high E, B and G string. And I just thought, okay, I had to go look at this and basically see what the difference in the string action was between those 2 guitars. And I remembered that the Tele was set up with 1.6 on both E strings, and then matched to the 9.5 radius using the understring radius here. But I wasn't sure about the Stratocaster, because it was quite a long time since I did a proper setup on that. And the fretboard on that Stratocaster is 12 inch, just like this chord guitar here. So my first thought was that I could just take the 12-inch Understrings radius gauge and just slide it underneath and check for the proper radius. And those strings were actually not matching. And that's when I brought in this tool that I bought, and you can buy it in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but this is just the tool that I bought, and it has fret height indicated over here, and at the bottom down here, let me see if I can show this to you. At the bottom it has in millimeters showing the string height, so you could basically take this tool and put it down at the 12th fret here, and you would be able to see what string height I'm currently having on the guitar here, or you could do it at the 17th fret or wherever you like it. And this enabled me to take a closer look at what the difference between the Stratocaster and the Tele actually was. And it was actually quite surprising, because when you read about string height or action on many forums and basically just on the internet, you see a lot of people saying that low action is the preferred method, or at least what you should shoot for. But low action is also very personal, because depending on what type of player you are. But when I do a lot of guitar setups, I basically shoot for a low action, because I know if I can go there, then I can always, alter the string height and make it match whatever I might need. But then I went in and looked at the Stratocaster and the string height, and I knew that because I had some difficulties adapting to the Telecaster, I found out that the high E, the B string, and the G string on the Stratocaster was actually set quite higher than they were on the Telecaster. On the Tele they were set at 1.6 millimeters, and I went and checked the height at the 12th fret on the Stratocaster, and it actually showed that the high E string was all the way up at 2.25 millimeters. And at first I just thought, wow, that was really high. But then I went across to the B string and the G string, and they were also at 2.25, and basically just ranging from there. But measuring the low E string on that Stratocaster, that was actually all the way down at 1.6 millimeters. So that just made me think, and I did a little research basically on how people go about adjusting their action on the guitars and what they like, and if it's personal preference or what they shoot for. And it just made me realize that it can be also fine reading on the internet, in guitar setup books or anything like that, but at the end of the day it all really comes down to what you like and prefer yourself, and you should basically see all those factory specs or forum answers with oh, you should do this, you should do that, oh, you're doing it wrong, boom, boom, all that. You should basically see all those scenarios as guidelines and tweak it to your own personal likings. And I believe that I, for quite some time, just stuck to the factory specs because I know those, and those specs were working out for me. But going back to that Stratocaster, and comparing it to the Tele just made me more aware of that no guitar is the same, and all guitars need different settings. So that was when this guitar came into the picture, and it was just sitting in my guitar stand, and I just thought, well, it's a cool looking guitar. It looks kind of a PRS type guitar, and basically just in a black glossy finish with a rosewood fretboard and a black matching headstock. But I just like the look and the simplicity of this guitar, and it has these two humbuckers here, a three-way toggle switch and a tone and volume pot. And basically the tone pot can be split, so you can split the bridge humbucker or the neck humbucker if you want a more stratty type of sound. But I basically like the full humbucker. But I took this guitar and I basically decided to let it be my tryout for this little experiment, going between a lower action and a higher action. So I did a little research on the net, just trying to see what factory specs are we looking at, and basically just to use that as a reference guide or a starting point. And I found that Chord actually made a document on how to set up their guitars, or at least what type or kind of measurements they come with from the factory. And they recommended setting the two E strings at the same height. And because this guitar has a two-pneumatic, it's nice, or you should at least check with either a Understring radius gauge or this type of radius gauge here that you can place on top of the strings here to see if they match. You should at least check that the two-pneumatic bridge is actually a 12-inch radius matching the fretboard. And I did that, and I adjusted these two outer E strings down to 1.6 millimeters. And I just went over it with both the understring radius and the, let's just call this the overstring radius. With both of those, and checked if the radius was matched, and it was. So everything was fine from there. I just went in and adjusted the pickups to match that particular action, adjusted the neck relief, and basically just took the guitar, tuned to pitch, and then played it for maybe half an hour. And having both the E strings set at 1.6 millimeters actually made my fingers slip off of basically the high E and the B string when I did bends, especially from the 12th fret down to the around the 19th fret. And I just thought, this is not going to work, because my fingers keep slipping all the time, and it was, I almost had to fight the string to give it a full bend, and if I just tried to do a little vibrato, the string was actually going to slip right out of my fingers. And that just annoyed me very much, and I just thought, this is not going to work. So I kind of thought, okay, I will just try and raise the treble strings up a little bit to see if that could help, because if you're getting a little bit of a higher angle on the treble strings, then you'll basically have a bit more room or clearance to actually get a good grip with your fingers on that high E string here. And basically when you bend it up, you will kind of get a little bit under the B string, so it would be easy to hold on when you bend and do that vibrato. So I basically just took this tool. I know that the high E was set to 1.6, so I basically I put it on the fingerboard here, and measured, yeah, it was at 1.6 millimeters. So from there, I basically raised it up a bit, and I raised it from 1.6 to 1.75 millimeters. So basically not a whole lot, but to my fingers, it made a difference. It made a small difference, but yet it was still not enough to stop my fingers from slipping when doing the bends. So I just thought, okay, so from 1.75, I decided to try and go up to 2 millimeters. And right off the bat, that seemed quite high for me, because that's 0.40 millimeters more than I'm used to. And it just seemed quite high for me. But I adjusted it, and right now it's actually set. It's set at 2 millimeters here on the high E string, and I made sure that I measured what the remaining treble strings were, and they were somewhere along the same height of those 2 millimeters there, and the low E string I left alone, so the 3 bass strings were still at 1.6, and when I adjusted it, I just played around on the treble strings here, and raising that action from 1.75 to 2 millimeters, that really made a whole difference, because the strings were a lot easier to bend and play now, and the strings weren't slipping out of my fingers when I did that full step bend or 1.5 step bend, and not even when I did the vibrato. So right there, I basically felt an improvement of the playability from the 1.6 millimeters I started out with. Of course, over time, I might have adapted to the 1.6 millimeters, but it would force my fingers and my hand to be a lot more aggressive, and maybe a bit more aggressive than I basically like. But that just depends on the player again. But raising it up to 2 millimeters, that made the whole difference. Right now the guitar is real easy to bend, and it plays a lot better now because I don't have to fight it. And of course I just made sure that I weren't getting any buzzing or choking out on the strings, because when I had it down to 1.6 millimeters, I noticed some fretting out from the 15th down to the 19th or 21th fret, and that was basically not going to cut it for me. And I've just leveled the board, so I know that all the frets are as close to level as they can be. So I just, right off the bat, I just thought, okay, I have to at least take these strings up a little bit. I wasn't planning on taking them up to 2 millimeters, but at least just raising them till that choking out and fret buzz was going away. So I had all notes clear from 12th fret down to the last fret here. But I ended up at the 2 millimeters, going over all the frets, making sure that I had no choking out or dead notes or buzzing, and those 3 treble strings are playing fine without buzz, without choking out. And then it was time to check the bass string. They were still set at 1.6 millimeters, and when I played around the 3rd to 7th fret, and again down here from 15th to last fret, I was getting both some buzzing and some choking out down here. So I just thought, okay, I just have to eliminate this buzz. So I just started by raising the action on the bass side up a little bit, and basically just kept going back and forth, playing the guitar, listening for any buzz, choking out, adjusting the tailpiece a little more, or adjusting the bridge, I should say. And I ended up at a point where I had no choking out, no fret buzzing. The notes were played cleanly. and I took this action gauge over it and measured at the 12th fret to see where it was at. And as far as I can see right now, this is at 1.75, so it's not been raised up a whole lot. But starting out at the 1.6 and going up to 1.75, that made the choking out and the fret buzz go away. And I weren't getting any buzzing from the knot up here at the first fret, and I just made sure that the first fret action was set basically as low as you would go on a knot, making sure that I had the proper clearance at the first fret action here, and that just basically made the guitar play a whole lot better and a whole lot easier. So on this guitar, the treble strings are sitting higher than the bass string, and I guess this is just the way to go on this guitar, because if I do it the other way around, I won't get near as much playability as I have right now. I guess you could always try go back and set the high E to 1.6 again, and maybe try and raise the low E up to about 2 millimeters to see if that slant from the low E down to the high E is going to make that give enough clearance here on the G, D and B string here to make a difference, but I doubt that. But that's another aspect that you could try. I just didn't do that because doing that, raising those two at different heights, just made the playability kind of to be where I like it, or where it made me play without effort. So basically, what I learned from this, and what I believe is important to share with you guys out there doing your own setup, is that it's all very fine to take a look at the factory specs, but you might as well just end up in a situation like I did here, where I was basically getting to a point where it for me was getting quite frustrating, because I just didn't understand why the guitar was being so hard to play, because on some guitars it worked for me with 1.6 millimeters on both E strings and just matching the radius, but on this particular guitar it just didn't. So I basically just scratched my head, did the research, and just basically tried to allow myself to get back and see the setup specs from another perspective. And it just made me realize that all of this guitar setup is so very personal, all about personal preference. But the factory specs are there to help you as guidelines. And especially these tools that I've laid out here are indeed here to help you too. They're here to help you achieve the measurements that you're looking for. And I therefore highly recommend that you have maybe not all of these tools, but perhaps some of them. I know that these tools have made quite a difference for me, because it allowed me, or enabled me to be very precise when I did these setups here. It's just something that makes the work go a little bit faster. But I just thought that this was a valuable point to share with people out there, because I just feel that it's important to constantly evolve and learn different stuff when you're working with guitars, because you never quite stop learning. I've found that I still continue to learn new stuff or new tricks that I can put in my bag and basically just bring up when I need those. And I've basically just started taking notes, just made a document on on my laptop, where I basically just go into it every time I found something new that I think, oh, I can use that later on, and I write it down, so I know that I can go into that document and I can see all different kinds of specs or what people said they would using or anything like that, and I can basically just from there go by trial and error and just try and see what works on this guitar. And hopefully within those measurements I'll be able to get a guitar that is easy to play and comfortable to play. And basically, the more I think about it now, when I've done that extra research and kind of wrapped my head around what's going on here, it honestly it makes more sense to me now, because of course before I also knew that when you're setting up a guitar completely, it's all about doing things in steps, because one step leads to another step, and those steps combined are what makes the guitar completely set up. So when I did this action height on this chord guitar, in pursuit of making it playable, I had to go in and take a look at the neck relief again, and I had to take a look at the first fret action up here at the nut, and I found out that I had to change the relief in the neck. I believe that before I changed it I had about maybe 16 thou or maybe almost up to 20 thou, and that would be quite a lot, and it might also cause the strings to choke out some places. And I basically just went with the factory specs, and the chord factory specs said that to set the neck relief at 10 thou. So I did that by affixing a cable on the first fret and basically just pressing down with my finger at the last fret, using my free hand to insert a feeler gauge around the 7/8 fret on the fret wire, measuring from the fret top to string bottom. And I just turned the truss rod nut a bit, and it basically just allowed me to get that 10 thou of relief in the neck. And from there I basically just went in and adjusted the string height, because I knew that the neck had the proper relief, that at least what the factory specs, I could always alter it afterwards if I needed to. So I just went in and adjusted, as I told you, and lastly I checked the string action at the nut, or at the first fret, to see how much clearance I had, and the clearance at the nut was actually how it was supposed to be. It was nice and low. The word in string kind of sitting high, causing my fingers to actually press that string out of tune, because if you have a nut that's too high, or the nut slots, the depth of the nut slots, if they're too high, you basically you have to fight your open chords and your basically F major and G major chords. They can go sharp because you add a lot of pressure because your nut is too high. But everything was fine up there, so basically just taking the relief and giving it that 10 thou, it just worked. And getting the strings to 2 millimeters on the treble and 1.75 on the low E, that made the whole difference. And from there just adjusting the pickups to match that. And I generally just like the pickups to be at 1.6 millimeters, and that's for both pickups at both sides. So 1.6 on treble, 1.6 on bass. I like that. Just gives me nice even output, and I haven't found any problems with that. Of course, pickup height is also personal preference, so you can always tweak it if you need more bass, need more treble, or the other way around. So basically, taking those steps allowed me to get the guitar to play as I wanted. And as I said, to me it just felt like these strings down here were sitting way too high off the fretboard. But when I went up to check the first string action here at the knot, I just realized that up here at the knot, the strings weren't actually sitting that high because the knot slots were caught properly because I did that. And that just allowed the, let's say, the first 5 frets on each string up here to be nice and low, easy to play, not causing my fingers to press any notes out of tune. And that just basically made me think that, okay, but up here where I play my open chords and some of my bar chords, the strings are actually sitting nice and low, being easy to play. But down here, going from the 12th fret down to the 19th fret, the strings are actually sitting a little higher. And that just basically, that's where I made, okay, I actually got best of both worlds, because I get the nice low action that I want up here playing chords, just making the chords a lot easier to play. And down here I got that proper, let's call it air, on the strings that I need to be able to not make my fingers slip when I do a bend. And that kind of just made me go, okay, so that's basically something to shoot for now, because obviously it's important to have the knot slots cut correctly in order to get your action to where you like it, but it's kind of a compromise between the two. And I guess to me that haven't been very clear, or at least not so clear that to what it is now. And that's the great thing about this, because you do guitars and you do good guitars and customers are happy, because factory specs will suit so many people, and basically just get them playing. But the more you do this, often you get a feel for what you like or what the customer likes, and you go for that. And in some cases it needs something completely different, and that just, it makes you think that you have to do this in complete another way to make this work. And this was basically the case for me, and it was just nice to finally solve it, if you like, and just making this guitar effortless to play, or at least a lot easier to play. So I just thought that I would share this with some of you guys, because it might be helpful, because I know that you get to a point where you think, oh, I can do this quite well and succeed with it. And yes, of course you can, because you get or develop a certain feel for it, but you never stop learning. Not that I thought I did, but I just thought, okay, hey, I'm good with where I am right now, and these setups are going great. And they were, and people were happy. Basically just because those specs suited the people and it suited the instrument, just making the instrument great to play. But this guitar just took me down another path, and made me quite a challenge. And when I think about it now, it's not really that big of a deal, because you just have to go back and tweak it to get it to where you like it. And perhaps that was where I was kind of afraid to go there, because, oh well, I like 1.6 millimeters on the other guitars, why isn't this so on this guitar? And maybe that just at first that made me kind of stick to what I knew. But going out of that comfort zone, basically just going by trial and error, that made me a lot more aware of that no guitar is the same, and factory specs should be seen as a guideline. But if you're happy with the factory specs, just stick with them. But if you feel like it's still not there, then you have to continue, or at least do your own journey to get where you like to be. And yeah, it just made a world of difference for me and this guitar. It is playing really great now, and it's kind of it's growing a little bit more on me, because before, when it played, when it was hard and stiff to play, I didn't thought that much about it, because it was just another guitar. It was hard to play, so it was just sitting in my stand. But it would be nice to take this guitar out sometime and play it a little more, perhaps. So who knows? Maybe you'll see this guitar around in some of my future videos. Who knows? But I hope this was helpful or worthy to someone out there. I know that it can be boring to watch a video, basically just seeing a guy talk about a lot of things, but I just thought that this might be helpful to someone. So again, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for the support. If you like the videos, please subscribe or share the videos, and if you have any questions, just leave me a comment below in the comment section, because I'll be happy to help you out with questions about guitar setup, fret level, guitar effects, anything like that. Yeah, so just post a comment if you have any. And until next time, guys, have a good one, and I'll probably see you soon.